Welcome to the We Can Do It Women movement, where women 60 and wiser step into the spotlight and out of the shadows, making the rest of their life the best of their life. Yes, I am Debra Morrison, your host, a wealth building expert who has championed for over 45 years extraordinary women just like you to uplevel our financial confidence. And now I'm on a mission to ignite a revolution, to do nothing short of that, to show the women that show the world, pardon me, that women 60, 70 and beyond are not slowing down. As a matter of fact, we're just getting started. And today's We Can Do It Women expert interview features Avivah Wittenberg-Cox. Avivah, welcome to the show.
My pleasure to be here with you, Deborah.
Indeed. So let me talk with you a little bit about Avivah's background, because of course that's valuable, but let me introduce her first and foremost from the 30,000 foot view. And there are so many accolades that she has earned and will continue to earn as a thought leader and a generational balance thought leader. Now, this is amazing because she was kind of out at she was out at the fore with the machete, a trailblazing, standing at the forefront of the future of work, the longevity economy, and the transformational potential of 60+ year careers. I just want that to land with you. The transformational potential of 60+ year careers. So she started knowing that the personal informs the professional and vice versa. She completed a year at Harvard as an Advanced Leadership Initiative Fellow in 2022, researching and writing about the new demographics and its multiple impacts on countries, companies, careers, consumers, and couples. This work highlighted the unique opportunities available to individuals in their third quarter of life. I love that. The 25 years after age 50. And in her first and second quarters, Avivah grew up in Canada, attending the University of Toronto as a joint computer science comparative literature major. Great. And oh my heart, I just love that when I read it. It's like numbers and words, smashing them together. What a great recipe. And went to Paris for a year, stayed for 30. She completed her MBA at INSEAD. Am I pronouncing that right?
INSEAD.
INSEAD. Along the way, she holds three
Top
passports.
business school in the world. Let me make a little plug for INSEAD. It's the top
Let's do it.
international business school in the world.
Yes. Wow. Holds three passports, Canadian, French, and Swiss, lives in London with her sculptor consultant husband, and enjoys visiting her two grown gender-balanced children, a son and a daughter, in Dakar and New York. Wow. So I found the little descriptor in LinkedIn so powerful that I'm just going to borrow from it for a nickel, and then we're going to opine. Avivah said, I've spent the past 2 decades building the 50-50 balance between genders in business. I'll spend the next 2 decades on the balance between the over 50s and the under 50s. Wow. Talk to us a little bit about that, Avivah, because boy, have you done that and more.
It's so simple and obvious when you start to talk about it, isn't it? But until you say it, nobody really thinks about it in these terms. So yeah, I've spent the last 25 years working on gender balancing the corporate world mostly. So big businesses all around the world. I've worked in more than 40 countries, mostly with men, actually. People don't often understand that I'm working mostly on systems. We were talking about systemics before. So mostly with the executive teams and leadership teams of large organizations that were pretty male dominated at least 25 years ago when I started. They're getting better now. On the issue of what was the big demographic shift of my early life, right, which was the rise of women into labor forces, workforces, and leadership all over the world. And it became obvious to me when I got stuck in a small barn in the UK in Somerset during the COVID pandemic and read a book called The 100-Year Life, that it struck me that the next big demographic shift that will really impact the future of work was going to be the rise, not of women this time, but of the older. And when I live in Europe, right? And so if you look at the statistics of Europe, workforces are truly getting close to this generational balance of over under 50s in the workplace. And so the workplace is not designed with Q3ers, what I call those Q3ers in mind, those 50 to 75-year-olds, is almost entirely designed for Q2ers and around Q2ers who are 25 to 50.
Yes.
So that's the what I've done for the last 20 years and what I'll do for the next 20 years. And they're remarkably parallel. What's very fascinating is many of my clients who were first on working with me on gender balance a long time ago are now first on working on generational balance today. No
Totally.
surprise.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And you talk about longevity has gifted us an extra 30 years of life, extending careers from 30-year sprints. I love this vernacular, 30-year sprints to 50-year marathons, and expanding the silver economy. 5-generation workforces are now a reality, and fascinating gender differences are emerging in the way men and women age, work, and live. I couldn't agree more. That whole analogy between the 30-year sprint and the 50-year marathons. You know, the first time I read that, Avivah, I just kind of sighed like this, kind of like, oh, we can actually settle in, you know? There's such a psychological difference between the sprint and the marathon, like the built for the long term, right? Talk to us about that in terms of the energy expenditure, if you will, particularly of women as we were trying to bust through those glass ceilings, and now of older and mature workers busting through those age discriminatory policies.
Well, at least it prepared us, right, for the battles to come. Never bad to be hardened by battles. So let me maybe introduce this model that I talk about called the 4-quarter lives, and I
Yes,
run a
yes, yes, please do.
podcast called
Yeah.
4-Quarter Lives, and it's this idea that yeah, up till the beginning of the 20th century, average life expectancy globally was about 46. Now we're pushing up towards 80. So we've been gifted by science in a single century over 30 years of extra life. I mean, it really is quite astonishing, right?
It
And
is.
so then my question to a lot of people is, well, what are we going to do with it, right? We're not really thinking. And so what's interesting is people often think, well, that means we're going to be old for a much longer, more extended time, when actually I think it impacts all of life. So that's why I came up with this 4-quarter life. If we're going to live to be 100, it's easy math to divide it up into 4 25-year quarters. The corporate world is very used to talking and thinking in quarters, so why
Yes,
not use it for our own
perfect.
lives? You know, how's your Q2 looking? Have you got any money in the bank left in Q4? I mean, that's right up your line, Deborah. You can use it. Um, and I think the we have this old kind of 3-stage life in our minds. You know, you kind of learn, work, retire. And that's not suited very well to the 4-quarter life. And this idea that we're going to retire in our 60s and be retired for decades and decades is something that I think is beginning to become very quickly obsolete, mostly because we don't have enough money for that option, most of us. And so 4-quarter lives means that, you know, we still spend the first quarter growing and learning and becoming adult. Q2 is what we used to think about as all of adulthood. It's where you initiate and build the foundations of your life, your family, your career, your savings for your
Yeah.
audience. And these quarters are a bit gendered. So Q2 for women, especially the women who choose to have families, is still this really complicated juggling act under a lot of pressure because we think that's our only chance to get things done and achieve and have the impact we want. And so this new 4-quarter lives gives us this new thing called Q3. And Q3 is these wonderful 25 years after 50, which offers everybody, but particularly women who've been really busy juggling, this much more expansive, freer post children, post family life to be able to focus on the things we really care about or want to influence or impact outside of family. and more in the world. And we don't talk a lot yet about these different shapes of careers, but that old model, which was very much based on kind of men's careers in
Yes.
companies, is now flexing. And I think women are kind of leading the way and showing that, yeah, you can reinvent in Q3. In fact, Q3 is when we become who we really are, minus some of the caring roles that we picked up in Q2. And so it's very interesting to watch all these women, particularly women of our generation, Deborah, start to take off in all kinds of really interesting ways. And I think Q3 will be a real gift to women. It'll be our decades of greatest impact and influence. If only we'd known. I wish somebody had told us this a bit earlier.
Oh my gosh, isn't that the truth? Now, I'm a reader of Financial Advisor magazine, and they just published literally a couple weeks ago, retirements lasting 60 years, possible and maybe terrifying. They say as longevity increases, become more common that a client retiring at 65 as a parent or parents also retired in their late 80s. Scientists say it's a small dystopian leap to see that a little further into the future, medical advances could result in 3 generations retired in a single family, one at 65, one at 85, one at 105, all mobile, all healthy. And so we're talking about the challenge for, financing this kind of thing. And so that has, put a little wrench into some of the models that, had been tried and true. You work with CEOs, and I didn't adequately introduce you, Avivah, the consultancy and the coaching that you've done 2+ decades as a CEO of 21st, her own company. Avivah's become a trusted advisor to global CEOs, leadership teams, executive committees in over 40 countries, as you finally mentioned. Thank you. Your expertise spans various sectors from FMCG and financial services to pharmaceutical tech. She's on the advisory board of the UK National Innovation Center for Aging and the Chartered Management Institute's Everyone Economy, an ambassador for the Stanford Center of Longevity in the Global Peter Drucker Forum in Vienna, and an adjunct professor at DePaul University in Chicago. And in 2023, inducted into the Thinkers50 Hall of Fame. I didn't even know that existed. I am so impressed with that. Now, Avivah also has a couple of books out, at least that I know about, Why Women Mean Business, and I have that right here on my Kindle, and 7 Steps to Leading Gender-Based or Balanced Businesses, Tackling Strategic Leadership Issues. And she has this 5 Steps to Longevity, Leadership, and Thriving to 100 graphic series that she presents to managers all over the world. So talk to us about the issue, and I thought this was amazing too in your LinkedIn. You work with CEOs and ex-CEOs to balance their businesses, and the basics are: women don't need fixing. Thank you very much. Men don't need blaming. Thank you very much. Age is as yet off the radar and overlaps with gender, and companies want to leverage that 21st century talent and consumers. And so talk to us about how you have, because I have 3 examples that I have pulled up, how you have instituted company policies into major insurance companies, Aviva one, and L'Oreal and Fidelidad, another. I'm probably butchering that, in terms of how the balance is so required. And I love this quote: balance isn't about women, aging, or diversity. It's a business issue. Hello, US government. Okay, talk to us about the impact you've made in these 3 companies, or anything else you want to draw to our attention.
Well, I think, we've gotten very used to, in the gender space, thinking of women as a diversity dimension, which is something I never subscribed to and never presented that way. Because when, I was starting to look at these issues, it was very clear that women were out educating men. They were outperforming them at almost every grade level, in almost every country, in almost every subject. They are now the majority of university graduates at every level in the US. I mean, the data is pretty amazing. And it's not just there, it's everywhere. And at the same time, because they were better educated, they got better jobs. They started out earning young men in a number of cities, which is part of the backlash of young men, which is part of the story that we should be paying more attention to. And because they had more money, they were obviously an ever bigger part of the consumer base, and in any case have always made the majority of consumer buying, purchasing decisions. So the idea that we would not consider the majority of the educated talent and the majority of the consumer deciding market as a majority, and we would somehow try to minimize their impact by bundling them into this artificial categorization that became, these large DI departments, was not a helpful frame for one of the biggest demographic shifts of our time. And the reason GDP increased in almost every Western country in the last 20 years of the 20th century was because of women's mass arrival into the workforce. And that uplift still exists in countries where women aren't working at the same level as men, which are a lot of countries. So it was this really obvious. I went to business school. It's a really obvious business opportunity, and smart companies knew it, and smart companies will continue to know it. Now women are so educated and so omnipresent, you can't really ignore them. You can still not promote them all the way to the top in the ways they might deserve, partly because they don't understand a lot of these life career cycle issues we can get into. But it was always pretty obvious that there were big benefits and there are big financial returns if you know how to gender balance your business. So the next topic is almost exactly the same with slightly different players. Now we're seeing a world fast aging. The Western world is already aged. How fast it ages further. Fertility rates are falling through the floor. Elon Musk can try what he wants, but it's not an easy thing to reverse. And so we're going to have to work, all of us as individuals, much longer than we think, because we're going to live much longer than we're currently planning. And the business world is going to have to kind of overcome its very naturally ageist setting. This is new, right? We're not used to thinking about working into our 60s, 70s, and 80s. For a long time, we haven't been healthy enough to do that. Now people are starting to learn about health. They're starting to learn about wealth. They're starting to learn about sustainability. And so I think we're going to start to see emerge a much more generationally balanced workforce. And so the leaders who get onto that earlier are going to retain the best talent, the most knowledgeable, experienced talent, and they will be able to unlock the benefit of the longevity economy by actually serving and listening to the consumers who have the most purchasing power in the world, which happen to be the over 50s in every country. I always laugh and ask companies how old on average are the people in their marketing department, because they sure as hell don't look like they understand anybody my age, especially not women our age.
Yes, and women hold the purse strings to so many purchases, right? That the statistics show that. So the mature marketplace and the women. This is incredible. So you are doing 3 TEDx talks, amazing. And I was horrified to read, and I'm going to go back on and comment. So horrified to read somebody put on there a politically incorrect address of this, and when you raised all of the salient questions, and that's the backlash, of course, because we're cutting at the roots of, in this case, patriarchy. If women have not been able to pierce that ceiling, and the men, risk, fear, risking and losing a lot of their foothold, rightfully so. And yet, if they could combine their singular foothold, their exclusive foothold, if we could combine and bring together, because I study the brain a lot, as you do, I'm sure that the neuroplasticity, the neuron chit chat that women bring, that women's brains bring, and then the men's kind of more, okay, yes, no, yes, no. That kind of combination can be, 1 and 1 make 5. Yet we do have to take the fear away and inject if need be, the profitability that the corporation is going to enjoy if this kind of co-balancing exists. But I don't know among those highly paid, and our government is certainly witness to the fact that this is going to be a very, very hard nut to crack.
Well, which is why I always bring it back to business and to also some careful wording and vocabulary, right? I always talk about gender balance. I never talk about promoting women because it's, you really need, when you're working in organizations or any human group that is dominated or has been dominated by one group, there's no point in using language theories and approaches that are going to alienate them, frustrate them, turn them off, shut them down. And so it's been a big part of our work on gender balances to integrate men right from the beginning, to make them lead the change, and to equip and skill leaders, male and female, but mostly male, on how to get really good at this so that it profits their business, their bottom line, and their own leadership status. And it does. When they get good at this, it's a win-win-win. And the same will be true on the issue of generations. I don't think it's helpful to go into organizations screaming ageism the way we used to scream sexism. It's better to go in and educate everybody about, this is a new demographic reality. We've moved from an era of demographic pyramids to one of demographic squares, and we're going to have to learn how to work across generations much better and much more intentionally intergenerational than we are so far. And that requires leaders who understand the differences between age groups and life stages, and how to respond to them both for, business opportunity, products and services that are developed across a life course approach, and for talent. How do you manage talent across these 60-year careers? It's a very different ballgame. And people over 50 Q3ers tend to have very different motivations at work than Q2ers do. And if you don't know that, you're going to lose them.
That's so critical, because I wanted you to opine, as you have been, as your tips and tools for CEOs and corporations and families, communities, to effectively implement these transitions. Because from Q3, 3/4 to 4/4, really invites, a whole new mindset, and the transitions, if you will, are often bumpy. So talk to us about your work in doing that. I know that you've put a very fine program into force at the UK insurance company Avivah Midlife MOT. Maybe it's MOT, I don't know. But talk to us about that, because boy, that sounded impressive.
So that was not my work. That was something that Avivah did on their own. And it's a very innovative and useful case study, I think, for a lot of companies. And it spurred a lot of imitators, which is great. And was basically the idea that if you, and a lot of companies are starting to look at, how are their Q3 employees doing? What do their engagement scores look like? Are they still investing in them? How many of them do they have? That's the very first thing, is how many of their employees are over and under 50? How many of them are 10 years from retirement? What kind of knowledge might be walking out the door? So when companies start to look at that, they begin to realize that there are some flashing red lights that they might want to address, which was what happened to Avivah. They saw that there were some significantly lower engagement scores, and they decided to offer this workshop for midlifers, and they offered it to anybody over 50. And it was basically to think about work, wellness, and wealth for the second half of life. And it was so popular. It was oversubscribed within 24 hours. It was a real surprise to the organization. And the biggest feedback they got from it was everybody who took it said, I wish I'd known this when I was 40. So they opened the program, they redesigned it and opened it up to everybody who was 40 plus. And so I think that's a lesson. And then the UK government picked up the program and spread it all around the country in their job centers. So I think it's lesson to us. People are avid to learn how to transition better from Q2 to Q3. It's a really peak key life transition. Um, I think motivations and objectives change a lot. I think financial issues and priorities change a lot. And if you're prepared, you tend to do a lot better in these shifts.
Well, you couldn't be more on target. And as we look at the budget kinds of concerns we're having here in the United States, um, first of all, slashing Social Security is something that people thought never would happen. And yet the ultimate idea of people aging even more, like generations, it will cause a certain financial strain. And so the legislative process, so we kind of have to reverse engineer, right? Say, so if our laws and the distribution of our budget is this now, how can we change it and the laws that affect that distribution of our budget such that we will sustain ourselves into perpetuity? And I don't know, how you may have been addressing this in the UK and elsewhere, because you advise companies all over the world. This whole shift in legislation and caring for the people, because you can't just have billions of people on the street, and they will be on the street if there isn't some kind of shift in the mindset and in the funding of this 3/4 to 4/4. Am I not correct?
Yeah, no, I think we've got to basically get that pension systems all over are insolvable, um, and need to be redesigned rather quickly. Sadly, it will mean, sadly or not sadly, depending on your physical health and mental health, is we will be working much longer. That's going to create riots in the streets, and it has in a number of countries. But you know, retirement age is a very strange concept that was invented by Bismarck in Germany in the 1890s or something. And it was always sort of calculated to be just shortly before your death.
Yes, of course.
And so now that those numbers have all shifted and we're living a lot longer and still retiring pretty early, um, that's just not going to be sustainable. So, how do governments get elected and increase retirement ages is the kind of big question. Are all of these retirement pension systems will have to be entirely renegotiated, but it's pretty sure that most of us are going to be working a lot longer than we think.
Mhm. And talk to us, Aviva, about how, it used to be you'd have one career, and now, people like when I was even selling my business in 2020. I mean, it's kind of like the stats out then. I think were like young people coming up out of college would have like 8 careers, and that was kind of blowing my mind. So the whole thing of learning and then earning and then retiring, I mean, we're reinventing ourselves all the time. Of course, with AI, that's become incumbent upon everyone to engage at least in an introductory basis, if not much deeper. So talk to us about how the need to reinvent ourselves and keep ourselves current is going to make that idea of working a lot longer something less than oppressive, because otherwise it's like, seriously, I'm going to be doing this boring job, for the 9 to 5ers or the W2ers. Talk to us about how this whole, retooling, if you will, of some of our earlier education and strategies is going to have to take place.
Well, and it may not be all that easy, right? I think we can expect quite a lot of traumatic events going forward. The issue of how long we're going to work and how well we're going to age are very related, right?
Yes, indeed.
Um, and I think it's also, and it's particularly visible in a big country like the US, it's incredibly unequal. There are some people who will age increasingly well, and there are many who will not and will suffer the consequences and have very uncomfortable and insecure older ages that will need to be bolstered up by safety nets and social safety nets. But again, we're going to need governments that want to vote those and support those in. If we don't mutualize care, and I think you're probably going to start seeing a lot of insurance companies and innovative financial creation, basically, if we're going to find new ways to get through this. And I'm not the financial expert here, Deborah. So all I know is that if, as individuals, we want to navigate these much longer lives, there are some basics that we have to get right, of which I'd say health is probably number one, wealth is probably number two, and then number three is this thing of constant learning and reinvention and recreation. You've got to stay flexible and ready to evolve. And yeah, that likely will start meaning multiple careers over our lifetimes.
Mhm. I couldn't agree more in terms of that importance, and then the importance of messaging it, because um, people can appreciate change if it's kind of chunked down and presented in ways that aren't quite like a tsunami, like we've been subjected to here. And so I think that as we language this transition into more and more dependence on AI, and invite people to get their feet wet, in stages, if you will, I think that perhaps is going to awaken the creativity that certainly us women over 60, have, I think, in spades, so long as we extricate the fear part. So, but if we chunk it down and we language it and say, hey, look at Avivah. She's out there. Look at all of our guests. We're out there. I'm out there. We're visioning this reinvention of ourselves and the continuation of ourselves, and not in dire and dour terms. No way, Jose. We are out there looking at the underrepresented, and that's what leads me into another question. How does your advocacy for women over 60, or gender balance, let me just rephrase my vernacular, reflect your broader mission of empowering underrepresented groups? Because you certainly do seem to be doing that.
Well, again, I'm very attuned to language, so I don't think women are underrepresented, and I don't think older people are underrepresented. My fight is actually for the overrepresented, who aren't given their due representation around the table. But I think that women are, particularly women of our age, in Q3, are particularly skilled at navigating change because they've done it a lot. We've been in and out of the workforce. We've been up and down the hierarchies. We've been struggling with recognition and promotion pretty well since we entered the work world. And so when it comes to this moment of reinvention, which is a bit freer, a bit easier, you're a bit more installed in your persona, your status, hopefully your finances, I think we're in a really great position to offer the world a tremendous amount and to give back, as you said, in multiple ways, whether it's knowledge or networking or support or philanthropy. I think women all over the world are exercising their influence and impact, often not in the most visible ways, but still delivering as they always have. And there's a lot of work which I really like looking into about the grandmother effect, which is just a not very useful metaphor on us Q3 ladies. I much prefer to say, like my British friend Eleanor Mills, she calls us the Queen Agers. Better formulation.
I like that. Well, I love the term crone, which sometimes has been maligned, but boy, that is worshiping, elevating to a level of significance and respect, if not reverence, of the wisdom that the 60-plus-year-old woman has within her. And hopefully we're inviting her to speak more and to be more of that wisdom, to emulate that, because people are watching. Girls and young women are watching, and they're watching you, Avivah. I couldn't thank you more. The advocacy of women and I lost my little train of thought here. Yes. What strategies do you give organizations to, without the threatening aspect, as I get it, you can't, to elevate women more into leadership roles, because it's that lack of promotion that causes that gender inequality, pay inequality, that really stifles women socioeconomically, because women end up like alone a lot of years, even if they're heterosexually or not heterosexually married. But even if they're coupled for a long time, at some point they'll probably be alone. What my stats are 7+ years now, with the longevity even longer. So how do we be able to finance our own livelihoods, if you will, that really do require us to be promoted into leadership and key boardroom positions that hold bigger company pension contributions or 401k matches and the bigger Social Security, if Social Security will be around in the United States, but the old age pensioners in the UK. How can you and do you speak to corporations to elevate women into these higher paid leadership positions?
Yes, of course. I mean, we've been working on gender balancing businesses across the entire life cycle and across the entire hierarchy. So the challenge, of course, is, as we were talking about before, I would suggest that men and women, up till now, maybe not forever, have slightly different career patterns. We were talking a little bit about how Q2 and Q3 are gendered. And the fact that one of the problems with promotion is they want to promote us at the wrong time of our lives. That is challenging for a lot of particularly mothers, which is why statistics on fertility tend to also be going down everywhere, because the work world has not adapted to women's career cycles, right? So it's very hard to be promoted in your 30s when you have two little kids at home and you're trying to juggle everything. And often when you emerge from that, you're just lagging a little bit the people who did not have children. And so you're constantly in this kind of catch-up mode, which companies don't always think through, and they don't think systemically that there might be a different point of careers and lives, the 50 plus, as we were discussing, which is actually when you want to promote women, when they have time, energy, and focus to really take on the big global international roles. So if we could get that education of leaders, which is what we do, is help leaders understand these career cycles and then really leverage the talent when it's ready to go. And I think that's women's big opportunity. The challenge right now is we have a lot of rather ageist workplaces where as soon as you turn 50, you're kind of ushered out the door as a little too expensive, rusty, tech phobic, or all the other stereotypes they throw at us. So that's partly the whole educational piece, right? And just by looking at some of the stats inside companies, when you realize that 30 or 40% of your workforce is over 50, you can't really survive by ushering them out the door and undervaluing and underinvesting in them.
Uh, yes, and yes. And I don't know how, for example, Elon Musk is imagining that is possible, that you just wipe out entire division. I mean, he's just hatcheting. And so the challenge, I believe, for us in these age groups, right? These 60 and wiser age groups, and particularly as women, I want to invite everyone to connect with Avivah, because I want to provide each of us with a stronger net, right? A stronger collaborative net that we can gain the inspiration from women like Avivah and their work. And so obviously we can listen to your podcast, and I just missed the name of it here. Give us the name of it again, please.
Four quarter lives.
Of course. And then you're on Substack. Talk to us about the elderberries.
So for my 60th birthday, so one of the big things, if you want to keep working, you want to stay relevant. Companies are super ageist. They don't care if you have 20 years experience or 5, right? What they care about is that you've shown learnability, that you've gone and gotten educated and upskilled. So when I was turning 60, my 60th birthday gift to myself was to go back to school for a year. And that's when I went to Harvard's Advanced Leadership Initiative, because then they're a little bit more trusting that you are investing in yourself and they can invest in you. So yeah, I really recommend big drive. Just do certifications, embrace AI, go online. It doesn't have to be expensive. There's all kinds of certifications and proof that you are with it, curious, and still learning. So my 60th birthday gift to myself was this year of education. And on my birthday, I decided I would start a weekly newsletter Substack called Elderberries to share the ride and say what it's like to go into your 60s into 2022 when I started, and what it was like to go to Harvard, and what I learned, about longevity and companies and generational balance, and share everything in a very personal. So those are, the elderberries is my. I've always written really serious business books and lots of data. Elderberries is my personal safe space where I write among a community of friends and change agents about subjects where I completely decompartmentalize personal and professional life, mix it all up, and share whatever the hell I want every Sunday around noon.
Oh, that is so rich. I love the aspect of re-engaging and making those late, within the past year or two, 5 years, accomplishments and educational opportunities and conferences and educational programs such as you have witnessed. What made you choose Harvard? Well, Harvard, of course, Harvard, but you got Cambridge. I mean, did they have the program that you wanted and others didn't?
Yeah, they are the pioneering school that started the first kind of midlife transition program, which is called Advanced Leadership Initiative, where basically they're taking leaders with 30 years experience and inviting them to address some of the world's big problems and issues and spend the rest of their lives addressing these bigger systemic issues. And so, yeah, it was absolutely the number one program in the world that started doing this. Now there are a dozen universities around the world that have followed in its suit, and I write and think a lot about those other ones as well. I think you'll see this spreading. We're going to need universities that don't just focus on us from 18 to 22 and then drop us for the rest of our lives, but on the contrary, that accompany us and through all these transitions and every decade so that we can stay skilled and ready and relevant for what's to come. Because there's a
Well,
lot more of it.
there's a lot more of it. And so finally, just to wrap, because I want to value your time, what legacy do you hope that we all, and the We Can Do It Women 60 plus community, we are so aligned in ethos and otherwise, what legacy do you hope that we can leave for future generations of all genders?
Well, I think we are showing the world how to grow older, better, wiser, healthier, and I hope wealthier. How to navigate. I think women are absolutely at the forefront of curiosity and education. Every time I do any of my longevity work, it attracts 70% women. I don't know why. I don't know why the men aren't equally interested. The men are usually trying to extend life with strange, pills and cryogenetics and ice baths and stuff like that. There's much more interest in extending life. Whereas for, I think, a lot of the women, it's much more about, well, how are we going to make the life we already have, which is unusually long and record breaking? How do we make it better? And how do we make it intergenerationally supportive? And how do we make sure that our sons and daughters thrive and thrive together? I think that'll be our gift and legacy. And I should add, in a planet that's not going to self-destruct, because that's another issue that I think women have been pushing at the forefront of.
Oh, absolutely. So Aviva, obviously you are all over the place, LinkedIn, YouTube, as I say, 3 TEDx talks, a Substack now, any other prime LinkedIn, of course, any other prime places where they can connect with you, your podcast, have I?
Key things on longevity are Four Quarter Lives podcast and the Elderberries newsletter. And if you're lost and just want to click my name, I got a website that will point you in all the other directions.
Well, I am so delighted to share this time with you and appreciative of your extending your expertise and wisdom to the world, clearly. And we're just privileged to grab a snippet of it today. So thank you for joining us today on the We Can Do It Women Show. Remember, I see you, I value you, and your greatest chapter is just beginning. If today's episode sparked something in you, I invite you to join our Vibrant We Can Do It Women Facebook community via the link in the description below. And if you may be experiencing overwhelm, pop into my March 12th, yep, this Wednesday, 2 days from now, 6 p.m. Eastern time, Crush Overwhelm and Take Back Our Control. The link below to join. Until next time, this is Debra Morrison reminding you that it's never too late to shine, and pay attention to your money and it will surely pay you back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.